Now available in paperback and e-readers. Isis, Bride of Dracula. The Goddess Next Door and John Haynes team up to take on the dark vampire lord in this action-packed Isis series adventure. Get Isis, Bride of Dracula in paperback and e-readers at online booksellers today. How hard is it to write a Blade movie? That's the critical question I have to ask 7 years after Marvel Studios announced that it was going to do a reboot of the 1998 movie Blade, which starred Wesley Snipes and revived the entire superhero genre almost 20 years ago. And I have to ask that question because it seems like this reboot of Blade, which was supposed to star Academy Award-winning actor Mahershala Ali as part of Marvel Studios' Phase 4, can't seem to get up off the ground. Now, back in 2019, Kevin Feige announced that he was going to be doing a reboot of Blade, which was supposed to again star Mahershala Ali, an Academy Award-winning actor, and this film was supposed to establish the supernatural corner of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Unfortunately, over the last 7 years, the film has been stuck in development hell, and as it's been stuck in development hell, it seems like the people over at Marvel Studios can't really get a good screenplay off the ground. Now, the big problem I see over at Marvel Studios is that they're possibly overthinking the entire concept of Blade as related to their reboot, and this is one of the reasons why they're having a problem writing a decent script. Because over at Marvel Studios, what they want to do, I believe, with the character of Blade is that they don't really want to focus on the character or any of the elements that Wesley Snipes introduced as related to his adaptation that made the character cool. No, what Marvel Studios has been trying to do is trying to shoehorn their social justice agenda that basically led to the implosion of Phase 4 into these scripts, and these scripts really are not gelling and coming together. Now, when it comes to screenwriting, the whole point of it is to answer three critical questions. Who is the main character? What do they want? And why should we care? And you would think it would be easy to answer those three questions regarding a Blade movie because the main character is Blade. What he wants to do is hunt vampires, and we care because he looks so cool and awesome while he's going out here taking on vampires. I mean, Wesley Snipes turned this into a franchise back in 1998 that basically revived the entire superhero genre, taking a D-list character like Blade and making him so cool with Wesley Snipes' natural masculine presence, his skills with martial arts, and dynamic costume design and visuals to the point where Blade basically became an icon of modern comic superheroes as related to superhero movies from the late 1990s all the way to the 2000s, and opened the door for the revival of the entire superhero movie genre after the disastrous Batman and Robin flopped at the box office and almost tanked the entire genre. And again, I have to ask the critical question, why is it so hard to write a Blade screenplay when I know from a fact from being a guy who wrote stories in the vampire lore, it's not really that hard to write stories in the vampire lore and make them interesting. I mean, in less than about 8 months, I was able to write Eternal Night, my first full vampire novel, from 2019 to 2020. And before then, I was writing vampire stories in the SJS Direct universe, such as Isis, Night of the Vampires, Isis, Bride of Dracula, Isis Escape from Transylvania, and I recently wrote an epilogue to the entire vampire saga as related to the SJS Direct universe so far, Esteem Horror in the Hamptons, and in those 5 books, I was able to establish vampires as part of the supernatural corner of the SJS Direct universe, establishing all of the rules of the entire genre of vampires in the SJS Direct universe and how it relates to the supernatural, and making it fun and accessible for readers of all ages. And again, I have to wonder what's really so hard over at Marvel Studios. I mean, if a guy like me from the South Bronx can go out here and write vampire stories, why can't Hollywood screenwriters go out and craft a story featuring one of Marvel's most popular characters? Now, the statements from people over at Marvel Studios is that they say they're having a hard time being able to incorporate Blade and his supernatural elements into the Marvel Cinematic Universe, but I have to call BS on that because they were easily able to establish Doctor Strange as part of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and Doctor Strange is a master of the mystic arts and a sorcerer supreme, and you're telling me that you can establish a master of the mystic arts and a sorcerer supreme in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, but you can't really go out and make a vampire story. And that really shows me that the writers really don't know what they're doing, because incorporating vampires should be a very easy thing as related to establishing Blade in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I mean, not every character has to be big and grand. Blade is basically a gritty kind of street hero who is basically on the underground, and that's not really that hard to write. I mean, as all the big stuff is going on, he's basically on the ground, not really making a lot of noise, because the entire whole vampire subculture, as I always saw it, basically was a very quiet place. And as the undead, they would basically not be affected by things like Thanos' snap, and they would basically be looking to capitalize on the snap, looking to find ways to make way just to continue maintaining their existence. I mean, when I was writing Eternal Night, I basically, as I established the vampires in the SJS Direct universe, I always put them in an underground subculture right next to the goth subculture in the SJS Direct universe, and I made it where they were basically guys who really were looking to keep real quiet about their operations and usually just kept things on the low in the whole universe, not really out here making big moves like a god Cassius or a cyber goddess, but were really just out here looking to maintain the operations of Count Dracula, and had different provinces and different operations in different parts of the world. And as they reported to Count Dracula, who was a part of the Illuminati, they were just out here looking to maintain their existence as part of the undead and keeping their lore as related to getting this gift of eternal night. So there was a lot of, again, intricate things that I put into vampires, but Marvel Studios, they sit there and say, oh, we can't really get a script together. And it's really sad, because what has happened at Marvel Studios as they've gotten into this development hell is they've gone through 5 writers in 7 years. And when you go through 5 writers in 7 years, that's not really a good sign for a film project. I know this from my over 25 years of studying the entertainment industry, that if you go through 5 screenwriters in 7 years, that's a really bad sign, and shows that there really is no direction for the project, because I've seen previous projects like the Catwoman movie that was supposed to come out way back in 1993 or 94. It was supposed to be a quick project with Michelle Pfeiffer, and Michelle Pfeiffer found the script not being good, and the whole thing is the film went into development hell once again. And by 2004, 10 years later, we had Halle Berry basically starring in a movie that was primarily made to be a cash grab for the producers so that they can continue to get all the studio money as related to this project being greenlit. And as a result, what happened to Halle Berry is she had one of the biggest bombs that basically derailed her career, because she didn't really understand the subtle politics of the business transpiring around her. And because she didn't understand the subtle politics of the business transpiring around her, she signed on for a deal for a movie that the original actress that it was intended for, Michelle Pfeiffer, passed on, and other actresses wound up, I believe, passing on it, like Gina Gershon, I believe, and they all passed on it because they saw that the script really wasn't strong and that they were constantly doing rewrites. And when you hear that they're doing multiple rewrites, that's a red flag. It's a red flag as related to that film. because it shows that the writers really don't have a focus or a direction. And when it comes to Blade, there really isn't a focus because we've gotten multiple stories. We got a story where we had Blade basically passing on his mantle of vampire hunter to his daughter in an original rumored concept. And when that one didn't get Mahershala Ali's approval, they went to rewrite the script. And in most recent rumored scripts, they said that one was set in the 1920s, which would be a bit of a problem because how could Blade be a vampire hunter in the 1920s when the character was clearly cemented as being part of the 1970s? I mean, that basically shows that the writers really aren't paying attention to the source material and trying to be authentic to it, where the way Wesley Snipes was as he adapted the material. Because as Wesley Snipes adapted the material, he did keep it contemporary, and he kept it contemporary where he basically made it where he made his take on Blade, but he also stayed true to the source material of Blade. But when I look at these scripts, again, you got Blade passing on his mantle to a daughter. That makes no sense because, again, you're not really establishing undead lore or understanding the undead. Then you have a whole thing where he's talking about being in the 1920s. Now, the most recent script is one that's supposed to be set in modern times, and they're still, again, trying to hash this out with multiple rewrites. They said this script went through extensive rewrites, and what's happening over at Marvel Studios as they go through these rewrites is, again, as it's stuck in this development hell, is they're basically burning through money as related to pre-production on this film. And when you start burning through money by hiring multiple screenwriters, it really is a bad sign. And it's a bad sign that we're going to get another dud if they ever make this movie. Because if you've got multiple script rewrites and you've got multiple stories going on, you really don't have a focus or a direction. And if you don't have a focus or a direction, you're not going to be able to make a quality film. And all of this is leading to the frustration of Mahershala Ali, who basically put his schedule on hold to make this Blade movie, and he's passed on multiple projects that would have made him millions of dollars. And unfortunately, Marvel Studios hasn't really shown him a quality script that's worth filming, and what they're wasting is precious time out of his career. Now, Mahershala Ali, again, is an Academy Award-winning actor, and he could easily go out here and pick up some really good projects. He could have gone out here and pick up some really good projects that could have paid him, but he still looked to hold on, hoping to play Blade. But the sad part is he's getting frustrated, and I understand why he's getting frustrated, because Marvel Studios should have had a plan for Blade, not just go out here and announce a random character without thinking about how that character was going to organically fit into their Marvel Cinematic Universe. And that's where I got a bone to pick with Kevin Feige, because he should have known where he wanted to go. I mean, Blade should have been directly tied to Doctor Strange, and maybe they should have introduced some sort of undead character to get things going as related to vampires being a part of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Because if I could go out here and introduce a character like Lilith Graves in the ISIS book Night of the Vampires to open the door for vampires, then why couldn't Marvel Studios open the door for vampires with some sort of ancillary character to show that Blade is in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, similar to the way that they showed how Thor and Captain America were in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I mean, with Thor, basically at the end of Iron Man, we saw the hammer, and that was just enough to get you excited. In Incredible Hulk, we saw Tony Stark, and with Blade, all you needed to do was have one undead character, and then show that spinning blade that he has, that he threw in the 1998 movie, coming at the vampire's head, and that would have been enough to get people excited about Blade being in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and that could have easily been introduced in Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness, as Doctor Strange was coming back to the main Marvel Cinematic Universe. Again, very easy to do to introduce Blade, but when you don't have a vision or a direction, which Marvel Studios hasn't had during Fail 4 and Fail 5, I mean, these two phases basically had no sort of synergy as related to making the characters flow together, and that was one of the big problems with the entire Phase 4 and Phase 5, Phase 4 and Phase 5, was there is no real synergy to make any of these characters work together as related to their multiverse saga, and that's why the multiverse saga is a hot mess, and Blade basically doesn't really have that cut that really slice into a fan's passion. Really doesn't make the cut at all because the writers really don't have that vision to establish vampires into the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And while these guys sit there and say that it's so hard, I don't really see how it's that hard as a screenwriter and a novelist myself. No, I see how easy it could have been done in Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness. That would have been the perfect place to put an end scene, cap scene, where you saw, again, the spinning thing that Wesley Snipes likes to throw in the Blade movies. You have him throw that at the vampire, and it's coming at his head, and he's running away, and then you got your introduction to Blade, and you can just open it up with your own Blade movie. Again, not that hard at all, because I'm somebody who's worked at building universes, and I know you can just introduce one character. Again, it doesn't have to be a major character. It could be somebody who's a supporting character, like I did with Lilith Graves in Night of the Vampires. And with that, I opened up the door in the next Isis book, Bride of Dracula, and introduced Dracula. And after a couple of Isis stories, introduced the entire world of Transylvania. Then took us back to 1994 with Lilith's transformation into an undead, establishing the foundation for the lore in Eternal Night. And again, not that hard to do as related to writing a vampire story, but Marvel Studios struggles with this, and as a result, not Wesley Snipes, they rumored that say Wesley Snipes was coming back. Again, another rumor because they had a hard time even knowing what to write. And now we have Mahershala Ali, who's getting frustrated to the point where he basically wants to walk away from this movie. He wants to walk away because it's clearly there's no focus or direction for this project, and he's seeing himself losing lots of money. And that's why he's thinking about getting on a Jurassic Park sequel, because at least the Jurassic Park sequel will have a focus and a direction, and it will do well at the box office because kids love dinosaurs, and he can appeal to an audience in that movie. So Mahershala Ali, I can understand his frustration. You sit there waiting 7 years for Marvel Studios to get its stuff together over this script. You sit there and wait for them to get it together, and I just sit there scratching my head because I sit there and go, vampires are an easy genre. They have been making money on vampires since 1931 with Bela Lugosi in Dracula, and the Hammer Horror Studios basically made its brand on Dracula movies featuring Christopher Lee. And you have Marvel Studios that can't really get it together. If Wesley Snipes can come up with a Blade movie that can revive the entire superhero movie genre and make one of the best superhero movies of all time, I wonder why Marvel Studios can't do this with the bigger production budgets and bigger production values that Disney has to offer. You have all the tools and the resources there. Unfortunately, since they don't have the vision, what we get is people who sit there and struggle with a genre that has been an easy moneymaker since 1931. Vampires are the easiest story once you understand the lore and you understand everything regarding it. It's not that hard to make a vampire movie, but Marvel Studios struggles with Blade, and I wonder why you are struggling with Blade when if a guy like me can write a vampire story like Eternal Night and the entire vampire saga in the SJS Direct Universe. Why is it so hard for Marvel Studios to make a Blade movie when Wesley Snipes was easily able to make one as far back as 1998? Now, if you want to check out the vampire stories in the SJS Direct Universe, you can pick up those books on Amazon.com in paperback and Kindle format. And if you want to find them on digital format at other online booksellers, you can find them at Draft to Digital, Google Play, Barnes & Noble, and big box retailers like Walmart and Target. And if you'd like to see me make more videos talking about Hollywood, and the entertainment industry, you can send a donation to the Patreon, the PayPal, or the Cash App by clicking the links in the description box. That's all I have to say for this video. You can comment, rate, and subscribe. Now available in paperback and Kindle, Vampires Stalk the Darkness of the Eternal Night. Get your copy of Eternal Night in paperback and Kindle on Amazon.com. Now available in paperback and e-readers, A Steam Horror in the Hamptons. The aspiring angel tries to escape a house of horrors in this action-packed, all-new Esteem series adventure. Get your copy of Esteem Horror in the Hamptons in paperback and e-readers at online booksellers everywhere. Support Black-owned and Black-operated digital broadcast media. www.niceradionetwork.com. Nice Radio Network, broadcasting 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.